People who meet you at a party generally don't think of you as an introvert. You're engaged. You chuckle at the proper moments. You hold discussions well, maybe even carry them. You appear comfy. You could even appear like the type of person who likes this. And then you go home, lock the door behind you, and something in you releases. Some stored tension you didn't realize you were carrying. And you lie on the sofa in silence for 20 minutes before you can begin to feel like yourself again. And the others at the party had no idea. This is the bizarre double existence of the high-functioning introvert. You've learned, possibly over years, to maneuver through social contexts with such skill and friendliness that nobody classifies you as timid or withdrawn or antisocial. You've built the talents. You've done the job. But underlying the act, and it is a kind of performance, even when it's real, your nervous system has been working harder than anyone around you could see. And ultimately, it needs to cease. Let's speak about what introversion genuinely is, because it gets mistaken regularly with shyness, social anxiety, and misanthropy. 3 things it basically isn't. Shyness is a fear of negative social evaluation. Social anxiety is a clinical illness causing severe suffering in social circumstances. Misanthropy is a broad disdain of humans. Introversion is none of these. Introversion is, at its core, about where you receive your energy from. Introverts are not those who despise people. They're people whose neurological systems are exhausted by social connection in a manner that extroverts just don't feel to the same degree. The neurological study on this dates back decades. Hans Eysenck's biological theory of personality stated that introverts had a greater baseline level of cortical arousal, meaning the introvert's brain is already working at a higher activation level than the extrovert's. Social stimulation adds to that arousal, and whereas an extrovert, who starts from a lower baseline, views social stimulation as invigorating, the introvert, who is already at a greater activation level, experiences the same stimulus as possibly overpowering, or at minimum, expensive. Not unpleasant necessarily, just pricey. The high-functioning introvert has, consciously or not, learnt to handle that expense. They've evolved social abilities that allow them to operate successfully in surroundings that are, neurologically, not meant for them. And the consequence is a person who frequently doesn't look like what people anticipate when they hear the word introvert. Here's something worth sitting with. There's a popular societal narrative that suggests introverts are the quiet ones in the corner, the ones who leave early, who don't make eye contact at networking events, who are plainly uncomfortable in gatherings. And although it defines certain introverts, it doesn't describe all of them. It notably doesn't characterize high-functioning introverts, who have frequently spent so much of their life in social contexts that they've grown really excellent at navigating them. What they haven't altered, what they can't change, is the energetic cost of doing so. Think about it this way. 2 persons can both be outstanding swimmers. But if one of them is swimming upstream and the other is swimming with the current, the one swimming upstream is going to be weary after the same distance that left the other feeling great. The high-functioning introvert is the upstream swimmer. The competence is real. The effort is also sincere. And the exhaustion at the end is proportionately substantial. This is why high-functioning introverts are so often misinterpreted, including, unfortunately, by themselves. Because they've grown so excellent at the performance, they sometimes question if they genuinely are introverted, or if that's simply a tale they're telling themselves. They could think, but I enjoy people, but I can talk to anyone, but I don't feel bashful. Yet all of that can be true, yet introversion can still be real. The delight is real. The depletion is also genuine. Both. One of the trademarks of the high-functioning introvert is what psychologists have identified as self-monitoring, a personality trait that characterizes how much someone adapts their behavior, appearance, and conversation based on social situation. High self-monitors are alert to social cues. They adjust rapidly to changing contexts and different individuals. They appear differently in different circumstances. This makes them socially versatile and frequently highly competent in social and professional environments. It also makes them tiring to be. Research on self-monitoring repeatedly reveals it corresponds with factors like leadership effectiveness, social impact, and the capacity to negotiate difficult interpersonal circumstances. It's an actually beneficial characteristic. What it's also connected with, particularly in introverts, is the feeling of social presentation as effortful, in a manner that low monitors, individuals who present the same way regardless of circumstance, don't often describe. The high-functioning introvert isn't just being present in a social context. They're handling it, tracking it, adjusting in real time. And that degree of continual social processing has a significant energy cost. There's also something significant to say about the peculiar inner life that tends to accompany high-functioning introversion, because it's typically where the most distinctive and actually helpful components of this profile dwell. Introverts, broadly speaking, incline toward what psychologists call depth of processing, a predisposition to ponder more extensively about information, to linger with ideas longer, to choose fewer but more important connections over numerous surface-level ones. The introvert's brain isn't less engaged in social circumstances than the extrovert's. It's frequently more active, processing more, evaluating more, attending more closely to what's being said and what isn't. This may provide a level of presence that other people find highly captivating, even if they couldn't define why. The high-functioning introvert who is truly involved in a one-on-one discussion tends to be a fantastic listener, a thoughtful reply, someone who makes the other person feel genuinely heard. The level of processing that may make big group settings costly is the same mechanism that makes private, meaningful talks profoundly rewarding for both persons engaged. Elaine Aron's study on extremely sensitive humans overlaps considerably here. People with higher sensory processing sensitivity, a characteristic that corresponds with introversion but isn't identical to it, digest environmental and emotional information more deeply than normal. They notice more. They experience more texture in an interaction. And this may be very lovely in the appropriate situations, even as it makes certain environments profoundly draining. There's a certain form of loneliness that high-functioning introverts often experience, and I think it's worth mentioning because it's one of the less evident consequences of this profile. It's the loneliness of being regarded as more available, more capable, more resilient than you actually are. Because you've learned to perform so effectively, people frequently don't notice you're performing. They don't comprehend that the ease they're seeing is earned, not free. They don't comprehend that the 3 hours you just spent in a room full of people will take an hour of pure isolation to process. And because you've never made it evident, because you've schooled yourself not to, asking for what you genuinely need might feel insurmountable. You've spent so long being the person who handles social settings well that admitting you find them draining might feel like a confession, like a break in the version of yourself you've been carefully portraying, even to people who adore you, even to yourself. If that resonates, I want to identify something clearly. The urge for isolation is not weakness. It is not unsociability. It is not a character fault disguised up as a personality attribute. It is the biological fact of a neural system that requires different inputs to stay regulated than an extrovert's does. Honoring that need isn't opting out of life. It's the circumstance in which you may completely engage in it. The study on introversion and well-being regularly reveals that introverts who have surroundings that meet their need for quiet and isolation, who have permission, structurally or relationally, to withdraw and recharge, report considerably better life satisfaction than introverts who don't. Not because isolation is necessarily better than interaction, but because depletion accumulates. An introvert who never gets appropriate recuperation time doesn't only feel fatigued, they feel reduced. Their intellect becomes less keen, their emotional control less constant. Their access to the depth of processing that is their actual superpower is smaller. They become a less functioning version of themselves in every dimension. This is why conserving your downtime isn't selfish. It's strategic. It's upkeep on the system that creates everything else you're capable of. So if you're someone who has spent years being good at social life while also finding it genuinely costly, who has held the tension of performing competently in environments that drain you, who has gone home from parties and released something you didn't realize you'd been holding, I want to offer you a frame that might fit better than the ones you've been handed. You are not overly sensitive. You are not secretly antisocial. You are not failing at the extroverted world by needing to quit it sometimes. You are someone whose special wiring makes them capable of exceptional depth, attentiveness, and presence, under the right conditions, in the appropriate amounts, with the correct recovery built in. That is not a limitation. That is a whole and functional personality, doing precisely what it was created to accomplish. What does your version of this look like? I honestly want to know. Drop it in the comments. The thing you do to recuperate. The time when you finally feel like yourself again. And if this type of honest investigation of how you're truly wired is what you're here for, there's more where this came from.